So as a whole big part of this dopamine thing that I've been doing for the past few years, I've also done the occasional coaching for my fellow INTPs. Sometimes I did profiling sessions with them, which usually included some sort of coaching, and then also worked directly with some INTPs to coach on varying topics such as productivity and creativity and just general growth and healing relationships, and just answering questions about life experiences and stuff like that. And so, as this episode is going to be about supporting INTPs who want to also be a coach, which does exist and it does happen, I figure I'd share some of my experience and some of what you can think about when it comes to wanting to be a coach. So after you listen to this podcast, I'd also encourage you to check out all sorts of books on Audible that include varying coaching and various bits of coaching advice. There's also a really great book by Beatrice Chestnut called the 7 or 9 Types of Leadership, I believe it's called, which uses the Enneagram type to express your leadership style and can help you with that, because coaching does involve a bit of leadership, and especially if you're working for yourself as a coach, there's a lot of things you have to learn about leading. So if you go to audibletrial.com/dopamine, DOPEAMINE, you can sign up and get a free ebook for your first month, and every month you get a new credit, and you can put a credit towards a book. So it's like $15 a month, and for every book that you get, you can get a book that is, cheaper than the actual cost of the book by continuing to stay on this subscription. So helps out the channel, helps out the podcast. audibletrial.com/dopamine. Check it out after you listen to this podcast and let me know if you like it. So without further ado, let's get started with the show. All right, welcome back to Dopamine. I am your host, C.Note, aka Christian Rivera, and today I wanted to talk about how to be a coach as an INTP. And now, this might sound unusual. If you're listening as an INTP, you're probably thinking, why would I even want to be a coach? Why would I want to sit on a call with someone and perhaps talk about their feelings, or talk about their life, or give them advice, tell them what to do? I don't like to tell people what to do. What what does that even mean? And so let me clarify at the outset here that coaching may include mentoring. It may include generally being a leader in your job or business scenario. And so this idea of coaching kind of extends to not just the traditional quote-unquote life coaching, but it can be skills development. It can be giving advice around relationships. It can be specific niches, is really what I'm saying. And I think many INTPs may have that, and you may have that when it comes to, maybe you're a programmer, maybe you're a blacksmith, maybe you're someone who has a skill to share. I wish I had a Skillshare affiliate, because that would be a perfect lead-in, but nope, I don't. So you can still go check out Skillshare. I have classes on there, and that'd be fun. So look me up. So I think one of the biggest things to think about when it comes to coaching or mentoring of any kind is these two main ideas that I think are the most helpful. One is the drama triangle, which is more about a codependence and having some sort of personal stake in coaching, because there are people who try to help people for reciprocity's sake, or who have some sort of personal achievement at stake, or a sense of self or a self-worth. Perhaps they try to elevate themselves as a hero over someone who is perceived as a victim, or trying to make lives difficult for someone. And so I'll get into the specifics of that shortly. But the drama triangle basically defines a codependent relationship. And I'm not talking just a romantic relationship, but codependence in the sense of having a personal attachment or something at stake when it comes to the person that you're coaching. Meaning that if you're supporting someone, you're providing guidance and mentorship advice that you're possibly, and the drama triangle is kind of an unhealthier attachment, you're dependent on the feeling or an outcome or a dependence or neediness or some sort of sense of value that comes from doing the mentoring or the coaching that maybe is a little bit too hands-on or is requiring a specific set of actions or validation or proof to feel better about yourself. It's sort of like an insecure attachment in a way. And so the drama triangle, as the first main point here, involves three main ideas that keep people in the triangle. It's the hero, the villain, or the victim. And so the hero holds power over the victim by assuming that the hero is the only person that can save the victim. And by keeping the victim powerless, then it gives the hero a sense of purpose. And it's the same kind of thing with the villain. The villain holds a more direct sense of power over a victim by and having someone to challenge in the hero. The hero also has the villain to fend off on behalf of the victim, but the villain creates the challenges. The villain is impeding the growth. It's keeping the victim down by having more of a direct control over them. And then the hero is someone that you have more of a sort of a tussle with, and it's just kind of like keeping you entertained, or it's kind of just like fun to keep the hero on their toes. And so this, you can see how this is kind of a codependent relationship, and this happens in real life, that if you were coaching someone, you could have a style of being a hero and just doing all of the work for the victim, and you could also have a style of being maybe too direct or too harsh and keeping the victim shaking in their boots and not wanting to try new things or not wanting to achieve or push themselves. And so the victim is typically keeping themselves down, and sometimes is a victim of outside circumstances, but the victim usually needs to find some sort of personal empowerment to get out of their situation. And so the victim feels dependent on the actions of the hero or the villain and is sort of waiting for outside things or circumstances to be correct or in the right place for them to be able to take any action or movement, right? And so in the case of an INTP, this could be an INTP that is like stuck in a introverted sensing cycle of passively entertaining themselves all the time, not living life or blaming the world's circumstances or saying that, I don't have enough opportunities because the world doesn't honor the way that I think, or no one listens to the way that I think or cares about the way that I think. And so you could very much be working with an INTP if you're someone who's coaching INTPs who is like this, or you yourself as an INTP who may be trying to be a coach could be in a place where like nobody listens to me, nobody wants to do what I suggest, and I can't find clients. I can't make a website. I can't figure it out. It's too hard. I don't want to do it. It's just kind of very lackadaisical, right? And so the hero tends to take on the role. If you're a hero type of coach, a hero is someone who would do all of the work for the victim and say like, here, hand it to me. I'll make you a website. I'll do this. I'll do that. you don't have to try hard at all. You don't have to do anything. I will take care of it. I will fight your battles. I will mediate all of your maybe relationship issues. I will handle it for you, right? And this is typically a role that I hear of or think of in like mothers in families who maybe their father and son are fighting, and the mother takes on this role of mediating the fight, or trying to keep the peace, or trying to solve everyone's problems. And so I can see an INTP who is on the receiving end of being coached in that circumstance, being someone who's always trying to fix other people's problems, or trying to make it so that they smooth over the relationships, or they smooth over they try to streamline a learning process in a way that makes it super easy for someone and maybe does the work for them, because it's just more interesting for them to solve the problem instead of enabling the other person, the person that they're coaching, to figure it out for themselves. And that this can happen in all sorts of Enneagram types as well. So the hero could manifest as like doing it for them, giving them too many hints to make it too easy, not challenging them enough, and basically making the person feel like they can't do it without them. Because as a coach, your goal is to try to support someone so that they develop autonomy, they develop an empowerment, they develop a sense of self-confidence and an ability to do the thing that you're trying to mentor or teach them how to do. And so the villain is someone that is very much going to be, it's going to make people feel uncomfortable. And so in the sense of an INTP as being coached, this could be someone who is perhaps too abrasive with their introverted thinking, too direct with their introverted sensing, and seeing things as too rigid. There's no flexibility. This is just the way it is. This is the only way that there is to think about this. And or someone who is using their flexibility in terms of their introverted thinking to come up with a counter argument to everything, even if they don't personally believe in that counter argument. So just kind of fighting and trolling and being generally a problem. But if you are someone who is an INTP who is trying to coach someone, this is making it too difficult. Maybe if you're trying to teach someone a programming language, you're giving them too difficult of a task. You're not assessing where their skill development is, and you're just throwing all of the most difficult tasks at them because they feel like they should just be able to figure it out themselves, when not everyone thinks that way, right? So even if you're an INTP who's learning to be a mentor or a coach, it's important to assess where someone is before you throw anything at them. And really this transitions us to the second main idea, which is called the empowerment dynamic. And this is a shift from the drama triangle, which is an inverted triangle with victim at the bottom, hero at the top left, and villain at the top right. If you flip the triangle over, that becomes the empowerment dynamic. And this puts the victim into the top role, which now becomes the creator, the hero in the bottom left, which now becomes the coach, and then the villain on the bottom right, which now becomes the challenger. And so it's important to know that these are different empowerment roles. And I think the difference in when you're leading, guiding, or mentoring someone is that personal empowerment is a personal journey of self-improvement, of self-awareness, of self-respect, and security. So if you're feeling insecure, you feel this attachment or desire to have some sort of dependence, it could be, with INTPs, it could be especially devious because that extroverted feeling is an inferior function, and it can be really hard to know what that extroverted feeling is doing or how you are attaching, right? You may Even that assumption that you may not feel feelings, or that assumption that you will not get emotionally attached, can be the exact unconscious opportunity for that unconscious extroverted feeling to grab hold in a way that you would not be aware of. So it's important to ask yourself those honest questions of, am I attached in an unhealthy way to my client, or my young Padawan, the person that I'm teaching, or the person that I'm coaching? And ask if I'm attached to those things because there's an insecurity in me. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to wipe yourself clean of any kind of insecurities. That's impossible. That happens, right? Like, you can develop a fearlessness eventually as you go through life and develop as a person, but it's very natural to be insecure. It's natural to feel like a newbie syndrome, this imposter syndrome kind of idea happens to everybody. But it's important to just be aware of that. And then once you start to become aware of those tendencies to codepend and to attach to some sort of external validation, which again does happen for INTPs, you can then start to become more empowered and start to create a sense of acceptance for yourself and really start to go in the direction of this empowerment dynamic. So the victim is no longer the victim, because now they can create for themselves. They can take responsibility for their own circumstances. They can start to exercise. They can start to develop their own routines. They can start to think for themselves. They can start to feel for themselves. They can start to ask themselves tough questions. And this is usually who you're trying to empower. So as an INTP, like I mentioned, the victim is someone who is maybe passively spending a lot of time by themselves, or perhaps blaming the external world for holding them down. This is someone who starts to step out of their shell and starts to get out into the world and starts to not always literally create things, but create their own circumstances, to take charge of their own karma, to take charge of their own lives. And so this can be, for someone that you're coaching, this is usually where someone is when you're coaching or mentoring someone. You're trying to transition them from a victim space into a creator space. You're trying to encourage them to self-motivate, or to figure out, maybe not necessarily self-motivate, but to figure out what they need to activate or ignite whatever motivation they need. So I think that's important to keep that in mind, that even as an INTP who is coaching or mentoring or teaching something, that you're trying to ignite the fire within them to not only help them feel in flow and encouraged, but to help them know how they can get themselves in flow and encouraged. Because your goal is for them to eventually move on from you. Your goal as a coach or a challenger, we'll get to those distinctions in a second, to enable them to live on their own. Because you're getting to a space, if you're in that empowerment frame, you're going to be someone that is not dependent on the creator's success. I've had people that I've coached who, they go out into the world and they do their thing, and maybe I get an update every so often or I check in with them, but I'm not spending every waking moment, or really many moments, wondering how they're doing or what they're up to, unless they're paying me for it. It's not something I'm worrying about too much, because I'm focusing on my own stuff. I have my own life. I have my own challenges. I have my own things I need to create. And I'm going to continue to focus on that. And so the idea is to encourage them to, however it might be, it could be through logic, it could be through giving them the empowering tools that they need, it could be teaching them how to learn for themselves, whatever that may be, to get them from this victim space into this creator space. That's important. So the coach and challenger distinction, I think, is important, because from hero becomes a coach, and coach is someone who is on the sidelines watching the game and maybe cheering them on, maybe making decisions to support the flow of how they would operate the best. But they're ultimately soaking in the information, and the goal is for them to eventually be able to coach themselves or move on to whatever the next kind of coach that they would actually need for themselves, right? So if you're a coach for a girls' soccer team is not going to be the coach for the rest of their lives, right? The coach that they're working with is someone who is there for that season of life for that team and is supporting the individual soccer players and the team, right? During the games, but they're not on the field. They're not on the field kicking the ball for them, right? The creator is now the one who is on the field kicking the ball, doing the thing. The coach is not on the field doing the thing. The coach is someone who is a part of the team. They are cheering you on. They are someone who's going to support you. So to transition for an INTP, this is someone who is perhaps not trying to solve everyone's problems, or not even trying to solve problems that are not important to them, but trying to consider which of these, which basically taking more time to think about which problems are worth solving, which problems are worth helping someone with. And then if you are doing the coaching, someone who is just a little bit more hands-off. You're not trying to solve every problem. You're trying to encourage you're asking more questions than you're answering typically. And I think that's really helpful to get into that frame of mind. And so you're showing up to solve problems that are presented to you instead of either creating problems or trying to solve and do more than's being asked of you. And then the challenger idea is someone who is not just being like a villainous troll, but someone who is providing sufficient challenge, because flow is important when considering this. Like flow is getting yourself into a space where something is not too easy, but it's not too difficult, right? So the coach is trying to make things easier. The challenger is trying to make things a little bit more difficult, but still staying in that zone where you're learning at a good pace and you're not discouraged and you're not bored, right? If it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, then you're discouraged. So the idea as the coach, someone who is trying to find that balancing point, right? So these sections are not identities, by the way. This coach, challenger, creator situation, these are things that we're switching between. We very much have essences of all three in varying situations. So if someone's having a difficult time, for example, if my kids are trying to play a video game and they're having a difficult time, I can coach them through it and say like, oh, I see that you need to just make this minor adjustment and then I think you can do it. That's giving a little bit of help, giving them a nudge and supporting it not being too difficult or too easy, and just give them, I'm not making it too easy for them is what I'm saying. And then I can also challenge them to say like, hey, you should try this next one and see if this is working for you. And they can give it a shot. And if I can assess that it's too difficult, then I can kind of put my coach hat on and then just kind of ease off of the gas pedal a little bit, right? So making those adjustments, I think, are important. Obviously, this is dependent on your experience and your whatever it is that you're teaching or mentoring. But I think the main idea here is that if you're able to oscillate between those two, I think that's the challenger and coach idea, and to keep also a respective personal distance, like you're not taking things personally or you're not making it too personal by having a sense of self-worth directly attached to teaching what you're teaching, then I think you can be a very effective coach and be able to keep going to the next things that you need to go to. So I think that's important to think about. Those two ideas, the drama triangle and empowerment dynamic, I think are the most important elements for you to think about when you're transitioning to some sort of coach or mentor or teacher role, right? So as an INTP, I think it's important to know that your particular skills are in your introverted thinking, in your intuition, and sometimes it is in your introverted sensing, and sometimes, in very rare cases, it is your extroverted feeling. But don't lean on these other ways of coaching, the ways that other people do it. Do it in your style. So sometimes that might be being the challenger. You might be really good at setting up challenges for someone to try. You may be really good at providing language to support someone in understanding something. You may be good at providing distinctions. May be good at giving advice, right? So it really depends on what the situation is. But remember that you're leaning into your skills and your talents and the way that you think as an INTP, not trying to coach generally the way that someone else might coach. So your logic is going to be a superpower that's going to help you. But your logic is also going to be important for you to understand how other people use logic. So if you're trying to transition someone from a victim space into a creator space, you need to understand how they think so that you're not just blasting information at them, and you can assess where they are, get a sense of how they're going to navigate the challenges that you're going to present them with, and take the appropriate amount of space or time that you need for yourself to not overload your schedule, to not do it in a crazy, difficult way. And so all of that leads me into what I'm going to attempt to do. I apologize for the coughing. Is for my students, I'm going to be offering a monthly coaching through Telegram kind of thing, because there's this concept that I talked about a little bit that I may do on a future podcast around a use of time that I think INTPs would benefit from is thinking more asynchronously when it comes to productivity, when it comes to something you're trying to do in a professional sense, versus synchronous use of time. And especially with our extroverted feeling, with a synchronous use of time, being caught in an emotional moment, connecting with somebody, it can be really hard to know when to get away from that moment, right? You get kind of locked into that extroverted feeling because that inferior function can sometimes be all or nothing. And you're like, all right, we live in this emotional place now, even though I didn't want to be here in the first place. Now I'm stuck here, depending on whatever the situation is. So if you're feeling like you want to not be caught in that, what I'm offering is support for INTPs, but I'm doing it through asynchronous connection through Telegram, which is a way of sending voice messages back and forth on our own esteem, on our own time, and to help support you and solve your challenges, or give you something to think about through you actually being able to tell me your story, but we don't have to sit on a Zoom call. We don't have to be in the moment, like staring at the camera, right? So I'm going to be starting by offering my students this. So if you have any of the programs that are available on dopamine.teachable.com, I'm going to be sending an email soon that'll have information about that, and it will be discounted for students before I make it available publicly for like my YouTube subscribers and email subscribers and all of that stuff. So, make sure you go to dopamine.teachable.com if you sign up for one of the courses, and then I'll send an email in a few days, and then you'll get a discount as a student for the monthly coaching, basically, and to be able to support you in your specific circumstances. So if you are learning how to be a coach, or if you need some support in productivity, creativity, relationships, acceptance, basically any of the topics that I talk about related to your context, that's something I can help you with and talk to you about and support you with. And as far as I have right now, there are no major commitments, so you can sign up for 1 month, and if you have your problem solved, you can cancel, or we can just keep talking and so helping you solve some other ongoing challenges as we go. So with all of that said, I hope that this has been really helpful for you to think about your mentoring relationship as an INTP, mentoring, coaching, teaching, whatever it is that you're doing or considering. And I would love to know in the comments if you are doing some sort of coaching, teaching, or mentoring. What does that look like for you? What are you teaching? What is your skill set? And if you are looking for some support as an INTP, what are you needing help with? So either direction. With all of that said, I'm in need of taking a personal break, so I'm going to go do that. I appreciate you for listening. Thank you again. Just as I said in the beginning, audibletrial.com/dopamine, DOPEAMINE, also supports the channel. And we also have a Patreon at patreon.com/dopamine, DOPEAMINE. So thanks again. I appreciate you. If you are, this is your like second or third podcast you've listened to, either on the podcast feed or on YouTube, like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. I would appreciate also a rating and review. Would help the podcast get to more ears and spread like a positivity virus. That'd be fantastic. So I appreciate you. Go ahead and listen to the next episode, and I'll catch you next time on Dopamine. See ya.